Good morning. Forgive me if I sound a little off this morning. My throat, um, I'm definitely caught a cold or something. Which was going to make it a little bit harder to talk today. So we're here because consistency is what's going to make the difference. But I'm probably going to keep it abbreviated today. Yes. So if you're lurking, please stop, say hi, tell me how you're doing today. Um, the bad part is I look tired. It's on me. Excuse me. We're still gonna get our writing sprinted. And we're still gonna get the progress on the book. I'm setting up my timer. Set it up. Mornings are always 10 minutes. That's part of just having kids to get ready for school and such. So, you gotta consider your schedule and your environment when you're planning your writing time. This is why I do mornings, for sure, without fail. And we will go live, or we will go live. We will go into the document. And start our sprint here in just a moment. Okay. And the timer is beginning now. Good morning, Dominica. Well, good afternoon. Not quite. I'm probably not going to do a whole lot of talking, and then I'll probably do an abbreviated session today or this morning. My throat's not, my voice is questionable. The heat from the coffee, though, seems to be helping. Hi, Mike. How are you? We are in the middle of, well, I am in the middle of a sprint, um, a writing sprint. Just 10 minutes. I've hit the 7-minute mark. I know. Getting up to write is the one thing that pushes my business forward and pushes my family the success of my family forward. So I get up while the kids, well, I started getting in the habit while the kids were much littler. Because they're cute, but they're distractions. Especially when they want to climb on your lap and sit on your shoulders or attempt to tickle the mommy while she's trying to work. That doesn't happen. And you don't get much writing done that way. So I started getting up earlier and I found my groove. Now they're teenagers and I don't have to worry about that. Just have to worry about getting them out of bed on time. Well, helping them get out of bed on time. Whatever that is that we do with their high school. But I'm already in the habit, so I just get up and do what I do. Exactly. Do you have a routine for writing, Mike? Um, Excuse me. Yeah, writing is a precious opportunity. I'm blessed in that I'm able to do this full time. But I still have those days where time is fleeting. It's really hard to explain to people you work from home. I hope your day goes well, Mike. Thanks for stopping in. Make sure you do too. The funny thing is, I've just hit a part of the story that I kind of know I have to write, but I'm not sure I want to. It's needed to push the story forward, but it's going to deal with some really ugly truths. I'm down to a minute. Alright, timer's about to go off. This particular sprint for me was a lot slower than normal because I realized the area of the story I'm hitting. I actually anticipated hitting this part of the story much later, but I guess showing that things don't come out of a vacuum will be an important aspect. I know this book is going to deal with some pretty heavy topics, some very potentially scary ones for those who are not aware of some of the things that happened in American history. So this is going to be I just realized how deep it is going to be, is my point. It's really a fun-filled story about two girls who are able to connect in a unique manner and become friends despite a difference of decades. But as I'm hitting this part of the story, I'm realizing there's going to be so much more to this book that so many people don't. We try not to think about these things. But with one of them said in the time when these were things, and one of them said at a time when it wasn't something we focused on. And in an area where it wasn't that big of a deal. I'm just realizing what a challenge it's going to be. Probably hitting them an emotional spot. When you're writing difficult scenes, I know for me, it tends to take me longer because I try to be very thoughtful about what I'm doing. And I realize that a draft is a draft. So in a draft, you're not going to necessarily have everything perfect. And this isn't going to be perfect. There's going to be a lot of probably exposition, intentional or not. Although, as I'm sitting here looking at it, I can see the way things are playing out. So, I'm looking forward to exploring this. But I'm also going to find the scene itself to be very challenging to write. The harder part for me with this is that these are truths that I am reflecting on, because obviously I wasn't there. But we do have people alive today that were there. They are definitely older. They'd be living in the grandmother's building somewhere with the extra support. We have people alive today who had bricks thrown through their windows and rocks to disturb their peace, for no major reasons, really. Just because somebody was angry that it was Tuesday. And nobody ever deserved to go through that. And I'm about to tell this story from the perspective of a 10-year-old girl. This is going to be interesting. This particular subject is one I'm very, very passionate about. It's actually one of my themes that you'll find in all of my books. Tolerance and loving consideration for everybody. And sometimes they play out in grand fashion with space battles and planetary takeovers and stuff like that. In this case, in this sci-fi, which it absolutely is, I'm actually reflecting on history in a more and slightly more contemporary settings, and that's my personal challenge, because I'm Bill Zarok. That's my world. I'm building this into reality. If this were on Zarok, I might not be dealing with this subject, but it's not. It's on Earth in 1930 and 1990. And I can't ignore reality of the times. I picked the area that I picked because I know a lot of the logistics, because I grew up there myself in the 90s. I know, I just dated myself publicly. That's okay. So in theory, it kind of makes part of it a little bit easier, but the other part, it's going to be a challenge to write Mary's story, but I'm looking forward to it. How do you handle your challenging scenes when you realize as you're approaching it how challenging it's going to be? You know, while I've already done research, I'll probably go over some of that research. And if I see a gap for where I need more, I'll do that. I'll add more to my research document. Just to make sure that I'm being accurate and true to the people who had to go through it. It's going to be an adventure. I can imagine doing thrillers, you would absolutely do so. But you also write about overcoming that trauma and surviving it. What helped you break through? What helped you get to that point with your story that you could make it your nano creation? Or was it nano itself? Brilliant woman. Absolutely brilliant woman. Sometimes it does take something hard to recognize what needs to change. I'm glad you've been able to start writing a tough story for you. Are you finding it helpful as you're making progress? Makes sense. Yeah, they're chasing one another. Kittens are so funny. That's a chair, honey. Even the difficult ones. I'm sure. I am so glad that it was able to help you. My first 4 books were written and proved to be exactly the same way. I wrote them after a divorce, and it was a lot more profound than I realized. You know, I think you're right. Most creatives I know have to go through something, whatever it might be. We go through something. It's almost like we feel things differently than other people. We perceive things differently. And that's where the creative outlet comes in. Poets become more intense in their choices. And authors like us create they're cathartic for us, but man, do they take readers on a roller coaster ride. And painters will blow us away after they have gone through something. And on the other side of what we create, we generally end up feeling better. Maybe not 100%, but it's just like we start to understand something, like you said, our truths, the reality that we don't always want to recognize or accept. We're better able to process it and handle it. While it's horrible to go through, it's a very powerful tool for a creative. Does that make sense? I think it's awesome that you found your balance. That everyone finds that tit for tat for them. And my plan is to talk about distractions this afternoon to our writing. Same time I've been doing, about 1 o'clock. We've got good weather, so I should have no issues with some of the errands I've got to run today, which will be good. And lots of coffee and tea. When you get around to finishing the story, if you're open to allowing others to read it, I'd love to read it. There is no typical writer. Dominica, nobody is typical. Everybody has their approach. You have people like Mike who have to work around their schedule. You know, some people can. And that's okay. It's entirely up to you and how writing works for you. There is no typical anything. I am one of those people who I went 2 years without completing a story, but I didn't stop writing. I did a lot of pieces, and I had help trying to finish them, and I went through a really severe depressive period. I had a lot of stuff happen. But I'm not your typical writer in that I do things my way, like what we're doing right now. There is no typical writer. And anybody who wants to tell you there is, I've read articles where people have said things like, well, if your house is clean and neat, you're not putting enough time into your writing. Not true. I've heard people say things like, well, if your family has no problems, you know, you're not putting enough time into your writing. I'm afraid that writing is it can be very encouraging, and sometimes it feels like we are dwelling. But when we complete a story, when you create this bubble around this situation, okay? And on this side of the bubble is the trigger, and on this side of the bubble is the conclusion, and everything in between is the insane roller coaster that you're expressing. You just want to go from there to there. And once you've done that, it can be incredibly cathartic. Once you get to the end, at least in my experience, it's like taking this thing, and it was horrible and intense and rough, and now you can put it up on the shelf, and it can stay there. At least that's been my experience. Hi. I'm also experiencing kitty attacks or required snuggling. I'm not sure which. Oh no, I'm sorry. She was just getting to the box on the other side. Important details, right? They are so funny. I love that they play so much together. But then this one is a box dweller. As soon as she's done, she finds a box. They will come up in our discussion about distractions, I promise. I might even introduce one or two of them depending on what they're doing. And not the way my son did it the other day when he just decided to come out and put a kitty on the screen. But they are amazing, fun distractions. And exactly what you need to find a way to temper. Or the writing doesn't get done. Well, it's time for me to get everybody moving. So I'm going to have to get going. But I will see you this afternoon. Yes. They are absolutely ready for their close-up. I hope. You have a really great day. Afternoon, and I will see you this evening. It's always wonderful talking to you too, Dominica. I hope Hero's feeling okay today. I need to make sure I send him an email. See you later.